Okay, so today we're going to dive into something that I know a lot of you have probably thought about, and that is what's the deal with combining oral and injectable steroids? We've got a great resource to help us break it all down. It's called Oral and Injectable Steroid Stacks, answering common questions.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a question that comes up a lot, right?
Yeah.
Why would somebody want to take both? Like, what's the point of using both kinds of steroids? What are they trying to get out of that?
Exactly, and that's what we're here to figure out. So in this deep dive, we're going to really get into the specifics of what makes oral and injectable steroids different and why someone might want to combine them. But let's start with the basics. Can you explain the key differences between these two types of steroids on like a physiological level?
Yeah. So the biggest difference is how they're processed by the body. Oral steroids are obviously taken by mouth, and in order for them to actually get into your system and do their thing, they have to go through a chemical modification. This lets them survive digestion and pass through the liver.
So they can get into the bloodstream.
Exactly. But that process can actually put some stress on the liver. And because they're absorbed so quickly, they tend to have a faster effect.
So they work faster.
Right. But they also have shorter half-lives. That means they clear out of your system faster.
Meaning you got to take them more often?
Yeah, you need more frequent doses to keep those levels stable. Now, injectables, on the other hand, they totally bypass that first pass through the liver. They're usually dissolved in an oil and injected directly into the muscle.
So they go straight into the muscle.
Yeah, and then they're released slowly into the bloodstream. This gives them a much longer half-life, which means they stay active in the body for longer.
Okay, so they last longer.
Yeah, you don't need to inject them as often. And because they skip that initial liver processing, they tend to have a less direct impact on liver function.
Interesting. So it seems like there are pros and cons to both. So with these different characteristics in mind, why would someone want to combine them in a stack? It's not just about taking more, right?
No, not at all. The main reason for stacking is to get the best of both worlds. You take advantage of the unique benefits of each type. You see, the oral steroid gives you that fast-acting effect, that kickstart we talked about. So you'll see some gains in strength or size pretty quickly.
That quick boost.
Yeah, and that can be really motivating, especially at the beginning of a cycle. And then while that's happening, the injectable, which takes a bit longer to build up, is working in the background to provide those sustained long-term effects.
I see. So it's like getting a head start while the other one is slowly building up steam.
Exactly. It's a strategy to maximize both the early and later phases of a cycle. Plus, different steroids have different strengths. Some orals are known for their strength benefits, while some injectables are better for building mass.
Right.
So by combining them, you're hoping to get a wider range of benefits than you would from just using one.
That makes sense. Now, you mentioned half-lives earlier. How do those different durations of activity impact how a stack is actually structured and timed?
Oh, the half-lives are super important in designing a stack. Because orals clear out faster, they're usually used for shorter periods. You might use them at the start of a cycle for that quick boost, or sometimes even towards the end, to help solidify gains before stopping. This also helps to manage the potential liver issues.
Got it.
Sometimes you'll hear the term front-loading, which means using a high dose of the oral at the beginning to really kick things off.
Right, get things going.
Yeah, exactly. And then the injectables, with their longer half-lives, they're the foundation of longer cycles. They provide stable levels in the blood so you get consistent effects without having to inject as often.
So you have a steady base.
Right. And when planning a stack, you also have to consider how long each steroid stays in the body. That's called the clearance time. That's important for a bunch of reasons, like when to end the cycle and when to start post-cycle therapy to help your body recover. The goal is to time everything perfectly to get the results you want efficiently.
Sounds pretty complicated to get the timing right. Now, what kind of advantages would someone expect to see from combining these two types of steroids compared to using just one?
Well, the potential advantages come from that synergy we were talking about. Basically, you're using steroids that work in different ways and are processed differently by the body. So when you combine them, the effects can be even greater than the sum of their parts. Our source suggests that this can lead to faster and more significant increases in muscle and strength.
So you might see results faster, and they might be more noticeable than with just one steroid.
Exactly. Imagine an oral steroid that's known for its rapid strength gains and an injectable that's great for building muscle size. Combine them and you get that immediate strength boost while also priming your body for some serious muscle growth in the long run.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, in a typical stack, what are the usual timelines for using orals versus injectables?
Okay, so because of that potential for liver stress, orals are generally used for shorter periods, maybe 4 to 8 weeks. As we said, this could be at the start as a kickstart or at the end to solidify gains.
That short burst again.
Right. Injectables, on the other hand, are less harsh on the liver, so they can be used for longer, maybe 8 to 16 weeks or even more, depending on the specific steroids and the person's goals and experience. The key is knowing when to start and stop each one. You might start the injectable a week or two before the oral to give it time to build up before the oral kicks in, or you might add a short course of an oral at the end of a longer injectable cycle.
So many different options.
Yeah, it really depends on the individual and their goals. But we've got to talk about the other side of the coin too, side effects.
Right.
How do oral versus injectable routes impact those potential negative effects when you're combining them?
Yeah, that's a huge consideration.
Absolutely. So because orals go through the liver, they can cause more strain on the liver and mess with your cholesterol levels. Injectables are generally easier on the liver, but they come with their own risks like pain or infection at the injection site.
So different ways of taking them, different risks.
Exactly. And the key point here is that when you combine orals and injectables, you're basically increasing the overall stress on your body, which could make those side effects even worse. That's why it's so important to be really careful, monitor your health, and take steps to reduce those risks if you're considering this approach.
So it's not something to take lightly.
Mhm.
Can you give us a specific example of a common stack and how it might be strategically used?
Sure. A classic example is combining Dianabol, which is an oral steroid, with testosterone and anthate, an injectable form of testosterone.
Okay, so Dianabol and testosterone and anthate.
Right. Typically, someone might start by taking Dianabol for the first 4 to 6 weeks. Dianabol is known for giving rapid gains in muscle and strength.
Quick results.
Exactly. At the same time, they would start injecting testosterone and anthate. Now, this is a longer-acting ester, so it takes a few weeks for those testosterone levels to really rise. But after about 4 to 6 weeks, when the testosterone from the injection is really kicking in, they would stop taking the Dianabol to protect their liver. And then they would continue with the testosterone and anthate for the rest of the cycle, which might last another 8 to 10 weeks.
That's a great example of how the timing and different properties play out in a real stack.
Yeah.
So if someone is actually considering this approach, what are the absolute must-know things they should think about before they even start?
All right, well, first things first, you absolutely have to understand the ins and outs of each steroid you're considering. That means knowing how it works in the body, what the potential side effects are, and how it might interact with other steroids. You can't just jump into this.
Research is key.
Absolutely. You also need a solid plan. You have to figure out the dosages for each steroid, how long the entire cycle will last, and have a plan for post-cycle therapy, or PCT, to help your body recover its natural hormone production after the cycle is over.
So it's a serious commitment.
Yeah, for sure. And because of the liver risks with orals, you have to think about protecting your liver and getting your blood lipids checked regularly. And honestly, even though health authorities generally advise against using steroids if someone is going to do it, they need to find reliable information sources to minimize the risks. Knowing the potential downsides is crucial. If you are interested in more topics like this, or you want to order stacks, you can do so by visiting publichealthlaw.best website. So visit publichealthlaw.best to get your bulking, cutting, and strength stacks for maximum results.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive into the world of steroid stacks. We talked about the core differences between orals and injectables, why someone might choose to combine them, the importance of half-lives, the potential for bigger benefits, typical timelines, how side effects are affected, and even a specific example of a popular stack. Hopefully this has given you a better understanding of this complex topic.
Yeah, we wanted to give you a more in-depth look at the details behind stacking based on the information from our source.
Here's something to think about as we wrap up. Given that different steroids are absorbed, processed, and eliminated by the body at different rates, could people experiment with even more specialized and personalized stacking strategies that go beyond the general principles we discussed today? It's a pretty intriguing area with a lot of variables to consider. If you are interested in more topics like this, or you want to order stacks, you can do so by visiting publichealthlaw.best website. So visit publichealthlaw.best to get your bulking, cutting, and strength stacks for maximum results.
And remember, the information we shared in this deep dive is for informational and entertainment purposes only.